What's up, guys? We are back with another NECA Toys review, taking a look at probably the most anticipated of their NYCC exclusives. So today we're taking a look at the Batman vs. Aliens set. So just like the stuff that we got at San Diego, these are big window box packages with a Velcro cover. So you've got just a black field with the Bat logo and the Aliens logo with an egg down there as well. And it's pretty minimalistic, but it's clean and it matches the rest of the sets. And then you can pop this guy open and you've got your figures there in a massive window. So you've got the Batman, which it's undoubtedly the figure to get. People have wanted this Batman ever since we first saw him, and I mean, it looks to be the perfect comic Batman. But then we've also got the Joker XENOMORPH, which just looks ridiculous. So let's do it. Let's pull these guys out and take a look. And here they are out of the package, our Batman and our Joker XENOMORPH. And I'd say it goes without saying on this one that I'd imagine this is probably the most desired set out of the 4 that NECA has done. It's not my top one. That one was reserved for the Green Lantern and Predator set just because of the subject matter. But it goes without saying that this is a Batman figure that a lot of people, myself included, have been looking forward to for a very, very long time. And I think NECA has delivered in every way possible when it comes to this figure and when it comes to this entire set. You might be buying it for one figure or 2 figures, but either way, this is an amazing package, and we've got figure of the year territory when it comes to this Batman for me. There is a lot of really awesome stuff going on. So let's jump right in, see what these guys can do. We're going to take a look at the Xeno first, and then we're going to get to our Caped Crusader. Alright, so our XENOMORPH here is something that we're pretty familiar with at this point. If you got the SDCC set, it's basically the same kind of figure, a Resurrection-style warrior alien. But of course, this guy is done up in the Joker colors to kind of mimic that look that occurred in the comic books. So you've got a white XENOMORPH with a green dome on its head, and there is some blood detailing on this as well, which makes for a pretty wild-looking figure. It's still a pretty standard XENOMORPH figure, but you can't deny that the look on this thing is pretty striking. So as far as articulation goes, you've got a head that can look up and down. You can rotate this guy as well. You've of course got the articulated jaw with the inner mouth that's inside of that head. The arms go out at the shoulders and then they rotate in that socket. You've got a double jointed rotating elbow, so you get pretty good range of motion on this guy. You've got basically a joint here and a joint here, and then it rotates up there. You've got rotation and hinge at the wrists. You've got your diaphragm cut, so he goes side to side a little bit, and then he bobbles back and forth, but he mostly just rotates. You've got the legs that have the large hip bone pieces, so they do go in and out, but of course they hit the rib cage or the stomach area right away. You can twist in there. You do have a thigh cut up in there as well, but he can kick, I mean, all the way in either directions because there's nothing getting in the way. It's mostly just the outward kick that really is hindered. You've got a double rotating knee joint, so you can rotate at the top of the knee and then you can hinge at the top and the bottom of that knee. You've also got the second knee joint down here, which has some hinging and some rotation, and then you've got ball pegs down at the ankles, which I wish were a little bit different because there's still no real rocker action on these guys, which I still think is a bit of a negative. And then you've got toe articulation, which really does help to balance this guy out when you've got him in certain poses. So he is, you know, pretty standard as far as Xenos go these days. He has a lot of articulation, some more hindered than others. But of course, the big thing, literally and figuratively on this guy, is the tail. It's technically, you know, a wire in there, but it is movable and posable, and then you can rotate it at the base. So you've kind of got the telltale Xeno thing. So when he does get into certain poses, you can use that to act as kind of a counterweight just to keep him upright and stand based on how you've got him posed and where you've got those feet planted. So again, it's the same kind of Xeno stuff that you're likely used to if you collect this line. He moves pretty well. You just have to kind of worry about all of these different style of joints and then that big tail lingering in the background. Now, as far as the overall look and feel on this guy, I think it's pretty obvious what they're really going for here. So this guy is supposed to be the Joker XENOMORPH, so he has that color scheme. So you have a white XENOMORPH with a lot of blackish gray wash in there to bring out all the sculpt on this guy. So you've just got the tremendously detailed Xeno warrior sculpt here, which I think looks fantastic. I think the sculpt on its own looks good just from a figure standpoint, but from having this as something that I'm already familiar with from other figures with a new paint job, really elevates this thing quite a bit. This color is just striking in terms of the subject matter. So having a white xenomorph is a little bit of a cool factor, really. Not to mention the fact that I think the figure is incredibly well sculpted and incredibly well detailed to begin with. So you just kind of get this little bonus of having, yeah, a weird looking Xeno, but it works really well. And then you've got on the, you know, very long and terrific tail here, you've got some red paint detail to mimic blood, obviously, so you've got that down there, and then you've got more of that on the mouth to mimic the Joker's mouth in general, but then of course to give you more of that blood aspect, so it looks like he just, you know, maybe killed a human or something. But the big thing, for me at least, is the green head dome up here, and I think it just looks amazing. The translucent green plastic with a little bit of the sculpt underneath showing through, you can just make it out. I think it looks pretty stellar. It looks fantastic compared to the very, very stark white colors on the rest of the figure, so it's just a striking display. And again, it's a weird looking Xeno. You can't really go wrong with a crazy color scheme on a Xenomorph. Whether you really care about the subject matter here or not, this just plain looks cool. But it goes without saying, I imagine, that Batman is the main event when it comes to this 2-pack, just like Superman and the Armored Batman were the main events in their respective packs. There's no doubt about it that people really wanted this Batman figure, myself included. I don't buy a lot of DC stuff, hardly any really, but I knew I had to have these, and I would say that I was spot on in my assessment, because this is probably the best Batman I have ever seen in person. I don't think I've ever come across anything that looks this good. This is exactly the kind of Batman that I have wanted for a very, very long time. So yeah, kudos to NECA. You absolutely blew this one out of the park. So let's take a look at articulation and see what this guy can do. He's basically the Superman figure from SDCC. They're essentially the same thing. So you've got a head that can look up a little bit, pretty good, not too bad, down really well, so that works really well for Batman. Not a whole lot of bobble at the ball peg itself, but the barbell really lets you move if you rock that on its own. So you've got quite a bit of movement in terms of the barbell action there. Then you've got rotation all the way around. The arms go out, they rotate all the way around. You've got a bicep swivel, we've got double jointed elbows, and then you've got rotation and hinge at the wrists. You've got an ab crunch, so he goes forwards, and then he will go backwards a little bit. You've got your waist twist, your legs go out all the way, they kick forward almost all the way, they kick backwards quite a bit, and you've got a thigh cut up there. You've got double jointed knees, which mine are still pretty tight, but you've got double jointed knees. You've got your boot cut or shin swivel, and then you've got rocker, and then you've got hinges, which go all over the place, and you've got toe articulation as well on this guy. So there is quite a bit of solid articulation on this guy. I think he moves incredibly well, and I should say that outside of having a couple of joints that are kind of stuck, like you saw maybe with the knee joint there, nothing on this figure has needed to be heated up, which was a little bit of a difference between the SDCC stuff. I did have to heat up the Batman and the Superman, but this time around, this guy has been incredibly easy to pose, and I've had no real issues or instances where I thought that I shouldn't move something because I thought it might break. So in that regard, this guy is definitely a little bit ahead of the pack for me, just as far as how to move him. Now, of course, when it's all said and done, the big thing with this guy is all about the aesthetics. He moves really well, but I didn't want this guy because he might or might not have been able to move. I wanted him because from the second I saw this figure, when it was originally teased, I knew that that was like the kind of Batman that I really wanted. And I'd say that they absolutely delivered in the looks department. This guy looks absolutely stellar. So if you're familiar with the SDCC stuff that we got, so that Batman and the Superman, this guy is very similar to the Superman in terms of construction. They seem to share the same body, which would make plenty of sense, really. So you've got quite a bit of musculature, tons of striation on the chest. You've got your tampoed Batman logo there, which is really clean and crisp and very straight. Some incredibly bulging biceps with a humongous vein running down it. There's just a ton of little detail that brings out the incredibly jacked nature of Batman, and a lot of shading here that helps to bring out the sculpt. Tons in the abs, a lot on the shoulders and down the arms. You've got the blades on the forearms here, and a little bit of slightly navy bluish gray coloring as far as what's going on with his suit itself. So obviously you've got the gray for the suit, but this is it's got a blue, black, gray going on there. It's not one or the other, really. They're all kind of mixed together. You've got more shading that runs down his incredibly jacked thighs, and just a lot of musculature sculpted in there. And then you've got your boots down at the bottom, which mimic the same colors that's on the trunks and the gauntlets and gloves. And then you've got your belt with a bunch of little bat pods all over it, so some mustard color with a little gold. And then you've got an equally jacked back on the flip side here with some bat buns down there at the bottom. But you've also got this amazing cape. I think this is another instance where NECA has done a really solid job with the cape. It's very large and it's quite flowing, and the inside area is kind of rolled together, so it kind of retracts itself in. I'm not exactly sure what I should be calling this technique, but you've got you can feel it kind of bunch up at the edges where it wants to tuck in on itself to kind of bring it around him, and it really helps it to kind of form fit around the shoulders on the figure. You can, of course, kind of bring it all the way back if you want. And then it's got the kind of bat motif down there at the bottom. So it looks fantastic, and the color works incredibly well with the rest of the suit, so the crotch and then the gloves and the boots. But it's just a nice piece of fabric. It hangs really well. There's no wire or anything in it. I'm not sure I really care about something like that. I could see it being used really well for Superman, but Batman, for me, I just need it to look humongous, and it needs to drape over him, and it does that really, really well. And then this head sculpt, oh boy, this head sculpt I think is just rock solid. I absolutely love everything about it. This looks like a very hard-edged, very grizzled Batman, one that you definitely do not want to mess with. Not that you really want to mess with any Batman, but I think this one has a little anger in his eyes, and just the expression, the clenched jaw. This is obviously a different head sculpt from what we got with SDCC, just because of the helmet he has, and then of course a different facial expression. But it's just quintessential Bat. I love this style of ears on the figure. Everything about this guy just looks a really, really classic, and that's it. It's just a classic looking Batman, and this head sculpt really reminds me of that as well. So there is nothing more to say. The sculpt is just amazing, and the paint is top notch. It's a fantastic looking head sculpt. Now for accessories, if there's one area where this set as a whole kind of falls short compared to the others so far, it's here, because this guy doesn't really come with a lot, and the Xeno doesn't come with any, which on its own is a normal thing, so I'm not really knocking it there. But Batman has a bevy of things that he can come with, but he only comes with an extra gripping hand, and he comes with this single batarang that you can see here. The sculpt on both are fine, and honestly, this is really all I care about. A batarang's a nice accessory to have, but I really just wanted this figure to be a lone Batman. So it's not a huge deal for me personally, but I can understand where, compared to the other sets, he doesn't have a whole lot. But what I assume here is that he gets the short amount, he's shorted on accessories, so they can really beef up that Green Lantern and Predator set, because that thing is loaded, and honestly, it kind of needs to be. So I understand why that one has so much, and if they're maybe all costed together, then they have to have a little give and take. So they gave him kind of the quintessential thing for a lone Batman to have, and it's a nice looking Batarang too. So he has a couple cool accessories, he just doesn't come with a great deal, which ultimately doesn't bother me too much. And then here is a comparison of our new Batman to our SDCC Batman. And honestly, there's not a lot to compare to, really, just because of the fact that they are very similar, but also quite different. So you've got your Batman here, you've got your different Batman here, the one that's all armored up. So you've got two very different looks, but you can tell in the face that they very much go together. So like you could have this guy being your before fighting the Predator Batman, and then this one could be the after battle once he needs to have all that armor to soup him up. So they definitely look like they go together, but again, there's not really a lot to compare to. It's just two amazing Batman figures next to each other. And because why not, here is a comparison of course, our Batman to the Superman from SDCC and the Green Lantern from New York. I have not reviewed Green Lantern as of this review, but I figured he needed to be in this comparison as well, because they all share a lot of parts. But, I mean, don't they just look amazing together? These guys are truly blowing my mind when it comes to how well they look next to each other. This is without a doubt, the one example of why NECA should have the DC license. This right here is pretty close to perfection for me as a collector and what I want out of my toys. I can't stress enough just how amazing these are together. So overall, this is a stellar set of figures. There is no other way to say it. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the best Batman figure I have ever seen. It is a truly remarkable action figure, and as far as what I've reviewed so far, this is my favorite of all of these SDCC NYCC sets from NECA. The Xeno on its own is really cool. He's definitely not the star of the show, but you can't discount the fact that a Joker motif XENOMORPH is just a cool figure to have, and I'm okay with adding yet another one to the shelf. This Batman, though, is clearly the star of the show. They put a tremendous amount of effort into making sure that this Batman, which is probably the only Batman we're ever going to get from them as far as classic-style Batman, it was going to be just an amazing figure, and NECA really succeeded in knocking this one out of the park. He is light on accessories, but the figure on its own is, dare I say, perfect. I really love everything about this figure. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys NYCC Batman vs. Joker Alien. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.